Adventists believe and why we possibly have this hope. Okay? Death is not the end because there's better things coming, right? All right. Okay, so I'm going to start with this. I've given you all a handout that you can take notes on it if you would like, and some additional information, and I'll discuss that as we go along. All right, first of all, what do Adventists believe? Seventh-day Adventists, like other Christians, believe that after the second coming of Christ, God will cleanse the earth by fire and then restore it back to that Eden-like perfection. So if you had to say goodbye to a loved one, it's not easy. We yearn to be with those we love, but that yearning reminds us of something else too. We've been created for something more than this earth. According to the Bible, this world is not our final home. Rather, our forever home is the one that God has created for us. The Bible refers to this home of ours as the new heaven and the new earth. That's in Revelation 21:1. There is a place we truly belong. We will live with God for eternity. Isn't that wonderful? So, while we're down here as human beings, yes, we're going to have those motions, and it's going to come back and forth. But we got to remember that promise. This is not our forever home. We will live with Christ for eternity. We're going to start by reading our denomination's official statement about our belief in the new earth. On the new earth, in which righteousness dwells, God will provide an eternal home for the redeemed and a perfect environment for everlasting life, love, joy, and learning in his presence. Not yet. For here God himself will dwell with his people, and suffering and death will have passed away. The great controversy will be ended, and sin will be no more. All things, animate and inanimate, will declare that God is love, and he will reign forever. So both the Old and the New Testament reference this new earth. They are statements of prophecy and hope in God as the ultimate victor over evil. So here are a few scriptures. He says, "For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered or come to mind." So it's passed away. That's in Isaiah 65:17. The next one says, "For the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remind before me, says the Lord. So shall your descendants and your name remain." Isaiah 66:2. We, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. That's found in 2 Peter 3:13. The last verse says, "Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth shall pass away. Also, there is no more sea." So can you imagine what heaven just might look like? It's Revelations 21:1. So why do we need a new earth? Anybody have any idea? Sin. Okay. All right. Yep. I'd like to see perfection, huh? Every now and then I get in my garden, I'm thinking, oh, it ain't doing well. So we can go in the garden of Eden and we can pick our vegetables and fruits and not have to worry about nothing, right? So there is none righteous, no, not one. There is no one who understands. There is none who seeks after God. They all have turned aside. They have together become unprofitable. There is none who does good, no, not one. Their throat is an open tomb. With their tongues, they have practiced deceit. The poison of apes, that's kind of like a venomous snake or cobra, is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways, and the way of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. So that's in Romans 3:10-12. So that's kind of why we need a new earth. So the question is, when will the new earth be made? After all worldly kingdoms are done and gone, those who have chosen to follow God will receive the kingdom. And that's in Daniel 7, verse 18. This phase is referring to when will we inherit the new earth after God has destroyed the current earth. We'll receive God's kingdom. The verse in this context of a vision that the prophet Daniel talked about in the four beasts. One after the other, the beasts fell until a great judgment in heaven brought an end to them all. That's in Daniel chapter 7, verses 1 through 16. And I'm not going to go into the prophecy because I'm going to reserve that time for the pastor. I'm a therapist, not a minister. Okay? So I don't need to get y'all confused. I will talk about what I know. So what does the vision, though, mean? The explanation was that those great beasts are the four kings which arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. It's Daniel 7, 17 to 18. So those four beasts represent successive kingdoms or empires of the world. They will all come to an end, after which God has set up his kingdom forever. So no need to worry. What's kind of going on in the world right now? Beasts are getting ready for something. But we need to remember what those promises are. So when will the end come? Over and over, the Bible has promised it will come when Jesus Christ returns to earth. At that time, the dead in Christ are resurrected and taken to heaven for how many years? 1,000 years. Okay. That's in 1 Thessalonians 4:16. And you can also read Revelation 20, verse 4. So during this period is known as the millennium. Okay, so it's 1,000 years. The earth burning with fire as it will in God's final judgment before he makes the new earth. When these 1,000 years are over, sin, those who have chosen to deny God, and this sinful earth will be destroyed by fire from God after the final judgment. And it talks about that in Revelation 20, verse 9. Peter the apostle tells us what will happen. He says, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise. Remember that shout they talk about? And the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. That's 2 Peter 3:10. This earth will come to an end after Christ's return and the millennium. So that's after that 1,000 years. That's when everything on this earth will be destroyed. So what comes after that destruction of the old earth? Nonetheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. That's 2 Peter 3:13. We'll have a new earth, our eternal home. So, after all, did Jesus say, the meek, what? Shall inherit the earth. Matthew 5:5. Yes, they'll inherit it. Not the old, decaying one, but the new one, in which righteousness dwells. Isaiah 51:6. So what will this new earth look like? The new earth will be a transformation of what God created in the beginning, perfection. The fact that it's called a new earth reveals some kind of continuity with the old earth. But we will no longer have to deal with the effects of sin. When God originally made this world, he gave humans free will, right? Gave us a choice to do whatever we wanted, but sometimes we bump our heads. Unfortunately, humans use their freedom to bring sin and suffering here. And this is the reality we all know so well. We have to constantly choose between good and evil every day. The good news is that even before the world existed, God had a plan to deal with sin. He knew what could happen. He tells us about that in 2 Timothy 1:9 and Titus 1:2. In his plan, Jesus would come to this earth and bear the sins of the whole world himself, taking the penalty of breaking God's law. That seems like a heavy weight. This was the only way we could have the promise of eternal life, the life that we were supposed to have had from the start. So, in a sense, the new earth is also what we were supposed to have. So, let's look at that description in Revelations 21, verses 1 through 4. He says, "Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the heavens and the first earth had passed away. Also, there was no more sea. Then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, 'Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people. God himself will be with them and be their God. And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There should be no more death, no more sorrow, no more crying. There should be no more pain, for the former things have passed away.'" It's found in Revelations 21, 1 through 4. So, in other words, this is the promise of eternal life, or some people call it everlasting life, mentioned in the New Testament. It isn't about life happening on the earth as it is now. So, who'd want that anyway? Who wants to live on this earth? Don't you want something new? Okay, so we're going to live forever in this world in hurt and pain. We're not going to do that anymore. In this place, the effects of sin will separate us from God. We'll be reunited with him for an incredible existence. Here are some of the hints about what life will be like. The new earth will be like a cheerful garden. That's found in Isaiah 35, 1 and 2. We won't have any more disabilities. Isaiah 35, verse 5. All the animals will be tame and gentle. That's in Isaiah 35, 8 through 9, and 65, 24 through 25. We'll build houses and plant vineyards. Isaiah 65, 21. Those of you that don't have a green thumb, don't worry about it no more. We'll be able to spend time with God face to face. Revelation 22, 3 to 4. The Bible describes the capital of this new earth. What did we call it? The New Jerusalem. Okay? So who's going to live there? God's people. All those who have accepted the sacrifice of Jesus in their place will get to live in the new earth. Revelation speaks of these individuals as those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. Revelations 21, 27. But not everybody else is going to make this decision, are they? So through the death of Jesus is sufficient to cover each and every one's sins. Some people will reject it and have to face the consequences of their actions. They'll be destroyed at the end of the millennium by fire with Satan. Okay? So that's what the Bible records. That cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexual immoralities, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Okay, that's found in Revelations 21, verse 8. It seems that this thought will fill God's people with sorrow. But what happened? In our mind's eye, oh, I got plenty of time. So I keep living, right? We don't know when we may be called home. We have no idea. So eternal life on the new earth is the ultimate reward for God's people. They'll be able to spend time with him in a perfect world where sin won't get in the way ever again. As we go about our lives in this world, the prospect is our brightest hope. Even as we face difficult things in this life, we can look beyond the here and now to our perfect home. Then all the difficult things we had to pass through will seem so small in comparison to the amazing new earth that we will live on forever. So let this thought inspire you to keep your eyes focused on Jesus. Through whatever you're facing, it'll all be worth it. Okay? So I wanted to kind of give you a foundation Why should we be happy? Yeah, we are emotional human beings. We're going to cry. We're going to be sad. But if we have that faith in that foundation, we should be smiling. So, as y'all know, I had closure with Dad this week. And I finally got closure when I got to see him in the casket because I didn't go. I couldn't take the plane ride. But he's smiling. Like he's so happy. So that was for me. I needed that closure just for me. It's like, okay, he's at peace. And I never saw him in any pain. So I already knew he wasn't hurting ever. But just to be able to view that, I'm like, okay, so what you smiling and laughing about? you know? All right, slide number 2. How to calm these anxious thoughts. So we're going to go to that one. So we're going to transition now from the spiritual foundation to how do we actually deal with these thoughts that come to us as humans. All right. So you are expecting a phone call from your daughter half an hour ago, and she still hasn't called. She's also not answering your calls. You feel your heart thumping as your thoughts race. What if she's been in a car accident? What if something terrible has happened? What if? So our mind goes every which way. These kinds of anxious thoughts are very common. When things don't go as planned and we don't know why, it's easy for us to assume the worst. I don't know why we do that when we got these promises. But more often than not, however, these things turn out to be harmless, inconveniences, or minor misunderstandings. But how do we deal with this sorrow that feels so awful? How do we break free of its grip? It starts with our thoughts. Philippians 2:5. Let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus. Read Philippians 2 when you get a chance, verses 5 through 11. Which is why we're going to learn about how do we handle those anxious thoughts. We calm them by challenging them head on. Then we can determine whether our fears are valid or whether they're a product of our overactive imaginations. Okay, so what are our anxious thoughts? Anxious thoughts are simply those thoughts that cause us feelings of anxiety, worry, or fear. They are often triggered by events or situations, though sometimes our own rumination can bring them about too. Okay, so if our mind is in Him, why are we so anxious? And asking ourselves, what ifs? I tell my clients all the time, there's no such thing as what ifs. Or what if it's never positive? What if I made $1 million? You don't ever say that. You say the negative stuff. If we can all change those thoughts and say what if and make it a positive what if, we'd be all right. So a thought or expectation that something negative will happen, this is anxiety. Physical symptoms such as tension, an increased heart rate, sticky palms, or a knotted stomach. An action usually with a flight or fight response. And sometimes we do freeze. And we just say, I ain't gonna do nothing. I'm just gonna stay just like this. These 3 aspects align with cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's what I practice. That's a well-known method in psychotherapy today. So according to CBT, events lead to a belief, which then leads to a consequence. And that consequence is either a feeling or a behavior. So we have that event, we have a belief, we have a consequence. But the idea is this: what we choose to believe about a situation determines how we feel about it. That would cause those feelings. Our thoughts are the culprit. I can't change my past, but I can sure change what I think about. Okay? So let's add some biblical perspective to that. What does the Bible say about anxious thoughts? The Bible teaches us that what we think has a direct connection to who we are. That's in Proverbs 23:7. For this reason, it encourages us to ask God to search what? Our hearts for anxious thoughts so that we can have His truth placed there instead. So He says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything with prayer and what? Supplication, with thanksgiving. Let your requests be known to God. Philippians 4:6. David the psalmist lived this out when he prayed. He said, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties." Psalms 139, verse 23. We too can pray and ask to search our hearts and show us anxious thoughts, feeling our worries and fears. Most often, these thoughts will not be true. However, at times, they may be true but unhelpful. God wants us to speak both truth and helpful thoughts in our hearts, Psalms 15, verse 2, because he knows that our thoughts will shape our feelings and our behaviors. So he invites us to think about whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, Psalms 4-8. And the King James Version says it this way. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. How often our minds wander away from what's right and what's noble, what's pure? We start thinking about all this stuff, especially when you're watching TV or listening to something. You go left a lot of times. But you know you're responsible where your mind wanders. So you can't put that on God. Okay? We got to stay true and focused on him. And thankfully, we don't have to guess what's true. The Bible tells us what's true. And there we shall see it lived out in Jesus, John 14:6. God wants us to replace our negative thoughts with accurate and helpful thoughts. I remember when my brother passed in 26 years, he was 26 years old, and I was pregnant with my first child, and she's now in her 30s. But I was getting ready for the service, and I was in the shower, and I said, "Oh, what if I kissed him? I'm sure he'd wake up." God didn't give me that power. I can't raise anybody from the dead. So we got to be honest with ourselves. When we even talk about dreams and things like that, yeah, they came to me last night. They told me I needed to do X, Y, and Z. You know what would have happened to me if I would have said, "Oh, I'm going to try this and see if it works." You know how crazy I'd probably be looking at the funeral? What is she doing? We still kiss our loved ones, but we don't. It's not because we have the hope that we can raise them back from the dead. You've had that thought too? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Happen. But right. Yeah. Yeah. And we have those thoughts, but we have to be careful. Yeah. If it's God's will. We have to be careful. But even coming to church this morning, I thought to myself, I said, what if I did that? If I had that power, I'd probably wake up those people that shouldn't be woken up. Because you guys already know me, I'm very nurturing. But I don't have that judgment for that individual and know where they've been in their life. So don't give me that responsibility. You know what I'm saying? So we have to be able to read that Bible and seek him daily so that we know what's going on. So how do we deal with these negative thoughts? There are 3 ways for us to do that. Dealing with negative thoughts involves identifying our thinking patterns. We're going to challenge them, and then we're going to replace them with thoughts that are true and helpful. So Seventh-day Adventist physician and a world-renowned speaker who runs a depression and anxiety recovery program promotes this method in his book, The Lost Art of Thinking. He says, the goal is to systematically challenge and dispute your thoughts, discover if they are valid, and question their accuracy. So by analyzing and reflecting on what you are thinking, you will be able to see if you are playing old, dysfunctional messages in your brain. So, but why can't we just ignore the worry and anxiety? Sometimes it seems like it'd be better to avoid thinking about things that trigger us or cause us worry. Turns out, when we ignore these emotions, what happens? It hurts us, but not psychologically. Emotion suppression affects us on the physical level. That's why we all get sick. Researchers from Harvard School of Public Health and the University of Rochester noticed that over the 12 years, people who suppressed their emotions had a higher rate of death, including cancer. And those of us who have tried ignoring our anxiety know it often heightens the feelings. In the end, we feel worse. So don't ignore. We need a better way to deal with those anxious feelings, and these are 3 steps. We're going to identify the thought, challenge the thought, and then replace the thought. And there we go. Excuse me, guys. No, we're not done. That's just my testing. I'm still alive. Hopefully it won't go off again. All right. So in your packet, there's a sheet about the 4th or 5th page. It talks about negative thinking. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Sister Brown has some. So the first thing is, I need to identify that thought. The first step in challenging those thoughts is become aware of them. When your stomach tightens and the heart rises to your cheek, or the heat rises to your cheeks, what are you thinking at that moment? Challenge the thoughts. Now that you've identified your negative thought pattern, it's time to challenge it. Ask yourself the question, is there an effective way to do this? Here are some things that get you started. Is a thought true? Where's the evidence for it? What are some other ways to look at the situation? How likely is it that what I fear will happen? You guys are having trouble talking about what, and you may not have these exactly as I'm reading them to you, but yeah. Your sheet that I want you to find talks about cognitive distortions. I'm sorry. By asking yourself these questions, it's easy to catch unnecessary reasons for worry. And they also prepare us for that final step. So after I do that, I have to what? Identify that thought, challenge it, and then I replace it with the truth. So what does the Bible say? When we have recognized our negative thought for what it is, we're ready to replace it with the truth of the Bible and the truth of the situation. So the Bible calls this process bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. As we bring our thoughts to God and replace them, He sets us free. Find that in John 8:32. So here are some examples of truth, both Bible verses and reality that can replace your anxious thinking. So I want you to look at this at your leisure because I don't want to necessarily go through everything, but I'm going to give you some examples. On the very next page, it's real tiny, but I want you to have it. The first one it talks about is the negative thoughts. I can't make any mistakes. That's that all or nothing thinking person. We all make mistakes, don't we? Okay. None of us are perfect. So we see that in 1 John 1:9. My mother left me when I was a child. So I am destined to be alone for the rest of my life. What kind of thought process you guys think that is? If you were to, it's overgeneralization. So what does God say about that? He says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Hebrews 13, verse 5. The next thought says, I can't forgive myself for when I said something hurtful to my sister. Even thought, it was small, even though that thought was small compared to the many wonderful times you've had together, what kind of thought process are you using? It's a mental filter, right? Your sister remembers the wonderful times with you. She's not dwelling on that one time that you said something that was hurtful, okay? But we want to blow that up. How do you get out of which one?
When you have done something or whatever, you just won't leave.
That's your mind, right?
You just won't leave. Hey, God, I can't go no.
Okay. Well, the first thing I would say is, what does God tell us to do? Yeah, we go to that person and we ask for forgiveness. That's right. Once we ask for forgiveness, I remember no more. Why? Because it's in the sea of forgetfulness. So if you want that negative feeling to keep haunting you, that's your choice. But he freed you from it when you first asked for that forgiveness. Okay? So that's our own doing. Remember? God gave us a choice at the beginning. Okay. So we really have to really build on that foundation that says, you know what? I did what I was supposed to do. Only person we really have control over is who? So we need to do what we need to do, and then we leave the rest in God's hands. So if you want to carry that, what do you call it? That ball and chain, the rest of your life is going to get awfully heavy. Okay? And with that heaviness comes what? Sickness and diseases. That's right. Okay? So be careful with that. I'll do one more. There's a lot more on here, but it says, my neighbor didn't wave back at me. She must not like me. What kind of distorted thought is that? Okay, so I'm going to sit here and I'm going to tell Sandra what she's thinking about. He didn't give me that power either. But yes, we do that all the time, don't we? But why are we doing it? We don't know, huh? Am I supposed to be smarter than everybody else in this room? Didn't I say that we make mistakes? Yeah, so what are we doing? Trying to be God himself? It ain't gonna work. All right? So we talked about those anxious thoughts. And my screen went up. All right, so the Bible teaches us there's a connection, direct connection to who we are. For this reason, it encourages us to ask God to search our hearts for anxious thoughts so that we can have truth placed there instead. So again, too, Olivia, are we asking God to search our hearts? Why am I still feeling this way? Why do I still carry the guilt? Okay? Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, prayer and supplication and thanksgiving, let your requests be known. Search me, O God, and know my truth. Try me and know my anxieties. That's found in Psalms 139, verse 23. We too can pray and ask him to search our hearts and show us those anxious thoughts and why they're feeling our worries and our fears. Most often, these thoughts will not be true, even though sometimes they could be unhelpful. So, let me get to where I'm supposed to be. All right, we did the negative thinking, and just go ahead and look at that at your leisure. But the good news for each of our lives, we tell ourselves, God has something in his word to counter it. He sets us free to enjoy the present moment as a blessing from him. Seventh-day Adventists believe that when a person dies, their body decomposes as they no longer have breath of life. While the breath of life returns to God, it is as if that person is in a state of unconsciousness, like sleep. They are unaware of anything. Can we go to the next slide? So I realize that some of us like to go to the cemetery and we like to talk. I am not going to tell you whether it's right or wrong. Slide 5. Yeah, that one. And we do a lot of different things. But you have to ask yourself, where's the truth? Who can hear us? But who can? God hears us. So why aren't we talking to him? Something to think about. Now I know we got our own personal stuff, and it's like I gotta go see my mom. But is that a thought that's real? How come I'm not saying I gotta go visit the cemetery?
You're going to the cemetery.
Right, you're going to visit the cemetery. We're really not going to see.
What kind of
What kind of thought is that? I don't know. You guys tell me what kind of thought was that.
I think that person that they are going to the cemetery is just a piece of, because that body that actually, I'm pretty sure they know that that's the body that person did have.
Mm-hmm.
And they're laying there. I've heard them want to say she's there.
Oh yeah.
I will.
You're talking about mom, right? Uh-huh.
And I will, for me, just speaking for myself, I just go make sure flowers on the grave and things like that. That just gives you that piece of you know, of, I guess, comfort to know that our family's still here to be, not necessarily taking care of her, but there for her. Even though she's gone, and I know this.
Uh-huh.
It just gives me that peace of mind, put it that way, that I could just go and know where she is.
Okay.
But I also have a picture of her at home, and I'll say, hey, mom, or something like that, just for me.
Uh-huh.
You know, and I don't know, it just helps me through the day, or whatever. It's not that I'm saying that she's still there or anything, I just do it.
Okay.
Emotional reasoning.
Uh-huh. That could be emotional reason. And we do that all the time. Whatever we feel, what happens? We turn it into reality. But we have to be careful. Devil's busy. Now I'm not, and he's listening, right? And I'm not going to tell you never to go visit the cemetery. I'm not going to do that. But it should be in the form of celebration. Because if that's your ritual, who am I to tell you? No, but if you put it in, okay, I need to make sure that I go every day this week, then we've crossed the line. Okay? Things get kind of hard when the holidays come and the birthdays come and you feel like, okay, I gotta go see her today because it's her birthday. So you have several, what do I want to say, celebratory things coming. And I understand that because it's helping you with the process of death. But we know that she's dead. She can't see you putting those flowers on. But for you that are still here, you're looking for comfort. And that's all that is. She's not really there. Okay? You had to say?
I was gonna say, that's fine for us that know, but some people that don't know, and they really think that is, well, maybe they think she's up there.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's hard for them to understand that.
That's right.
They don't accept it. My sister lost her 17-year-old son, and I think that what really brought her down. She would go to the cemetery not once a day, but like 3 or 4 times, and stay out there for hours. This is a daily thing. She didn't miss a day
Mm-hmm.
going out there. And I think it just slowly made her lose it.
And that's the thing. If we succumb to all these things that are healthy, and when in reality it's unhealthy, and we're not processing, we're not even going through that journey of grief, then there's a problem. So, what do you say to that person? First of all, I got to learn how to listen to that person. That person doesn't have the same belief. So, if you were dad, bless his heart, he'd beat you over the head because it's not what you're supposed to believe. But I have to be a little bit more nurturing, getting to know that person, and then I can tell them my beliefs. The position that I'm in, I can't really tell my belief. But I will turn it around a little bit to say, okay, do you really think she can hear you? What's she telling you? And I wait for the answer. I said, do you really need somebody to tell you that, or can you do that on your own? So you have to empower that person to say, you know what, I'm doing this a little bit too much. So with your sister-in-law, it's like, okay, so what about work? And what happens to all the other siblings? I'm spending time at the cemetery. What could I be doing with the ones that are living? So you turn it around so they begin to understand it. You have to help them with that thought process that says, okay, you're staying stuck. So what is it that I can put my thought process so that I'm actually gaining something? I'm going through this journey and I'm not staying stuck. Okay. I think you had this.
I was going to say, sometimes you have to meet people where they are.
Hmm?
I had a coworker who was in the office, and a hummingbird came to the window. She had just recently lost her dad,
Mm-hmm.
and she was like, her belief was the hummingbird was kind of like an angel for her dad. Kind of like thing. I had never heard that before.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I attempted to share our belief, but she wasn't ready to hear that.
That's right.
And so what I did, I just back from
Mm-hmm.
it, and I let her agree with what she agreed. But I had never heard that a hummingbird.
Yes. It is.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
What I said earlier, I do the same thing, like Timothy was basically saying. I try to keep a flower with my parents and my brother. And I know they're not there. I believe the 7 years they believe, but it gives me peace because I know how she was about her family.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, anyway, I know that for me, but you have to be careful with people. I mean, people have to be careful, or you have to be careful when you go to cemeteries. Sand everything out because not only God hears it, but the devil hears it too. And he'll take that stuff and put it against you.
Remember how in the beginning we talked about inanimate objects and animate objects?
Well, just
Go
and
ahead.
we study about prophecy, and the reason, one other reason is when at the end of time, Satan is going to bring back your loved ones. So
And we
that's
said we
already
saw
talking
them,
to
yeah.
them. It's going to be kind of hard not to talk to them.
When you've been talking to them all along.
Been talking to
Uh-huh.
them all along, and
Uh-huh.
here they are standing in front of you.
Yeah.
You know, it's a.
He will play with your mind. He's good at what he does.
And also, she said something, the Bible said he can't, I don't know where it's at, but he can't raise, the enemy cannot raise the dead.
That's right.
You don't know some of these things, that enemy gonna have all kinds of traps set up, I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, those going to be.
Because I used to go
Right.
to the dead and know something until I joined this church, and it's a teaching church, and I learned the dead knows not anything.
Mhm.
The living know they should die.
Right.
So, and another thing I'm thinking right now is, why do people love so hard with people? Because we realize one day we're gonna have to depart from one another.
But you can't. But you can't. And I'm gonna answer it. We can't stop loving. God teaches us to love others, and we're not supposed to be isolated. It's like when you go through your grief and things like that. If you notice, wait a minute, Sheila. If you notice on the front of your packet, I think it is, or it might be on the last sheet, we're talking about, you know why we grieve? Because we love. If we didn't love, we wouldn't grieve. Because I wouldn't care nothing about you. Right. So he taught us how to love. Then again, too, to the opposite extreme. When God hung on the cross, what happened to us? He gave the ultimate sacrifice. So what if we didn't love? It wouldn't even bother us. So what are we here for? What is our purpose? To love like he loved.
Love nothing before him. Now, I understand, I miss my mother. I was with this woman until she died, from a child until she died.
Mm-hmm.
Same house and everything.
Right.
And it wasn't easy living there after she left
No.
this earth. But I made it through. Days walking through the house, putting clothes in it, tears running down, getting on work, sitting in the chair. I'm tired. Tears running down, but it wasn't easy. All I know, I got to hold on to what she said when she lost her son. She said, ain't no thing where she could have made it without the Lord.
Right.
That stuck with me right there.
But we have to,
Put something in your folks about Jesus.
we have to remember. Did he tell us it was all going to be about roses? Didn't he tell us we were going to have some trials? Right. But he gave us a map to endure. He didn't leave us by ourselves. We have to just be able to remember we can reach out and we can talk to him. It says most often our thoughts will not be true. So I have to remember, he invites us to think about what? Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable. I got to think about these things. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, noble, right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, it's excellent or praiseworthy, think on such things. So if we ask him to show it to us, you bet he's going to show it to you. You maybe even be asleep. That was scripture in Isaiah. Let's see, let me get you the right one. Philippians 4:8. Philippians 4:8. Okay, let's move forward. I saw a hand over here.
I was just gonna say, you know, you can believe a thing or know the truth, okay?
Mhm.
You know that they're asleep, we know they don't hear anything, you know that, you know all, you know that. But you cannot control the way you feel. You cannot control crying or missing a person or whatever. But I guess that when you lose a person, if we believe that they were saved, that we pray that they were saved, we pray that they were saved. It is a time for us to really, really work on ourselves so that we will be able to see them.
Okay, I'm back up just a little bit, Sylvia. You said the thought process of we have no control. That might be true in your mind's eye, but when we lose all control, who are we supposed to go to? That's right. He didn't ask us to do any of this by ourselves. So I'm not going to go out here in the public and says, "Oh, you guys have no control." That means that ain't nobody going to be in jail. Because what God said on the cross, what Jesus said on the cross, forgive them for they know not what they do. But there are still consequences. Okay? So we have to be able to watch that. Think about that. And yes, we're going to get emotion, we're going to cry, but we're not going to stay there. Okay? You're going to have that emotion, but I'm not going to do it for the next 10 years. Okay?
When my dad passed, I had a person come to me right as soon as and this person said, it'll get better. And when the person said it to me, I know it was gonna get better, but I wasn't ready to hear that. I wasn't ready to hear that. Then,
Right.
But it's true.
But those are those thoughts and our belief systems. Okay? So let's talk about that a little bit more when we go to the stages of grief. Everyone reacts to losses differently. So I'm not going to give you a cookie cutter approach. This works for everybody. We're all different. Yes.
So, like, if you have somebody that your relatives, because we all grieve in different stages and different phases of how we deal with it. But I have someone personally with me that is going through it totally different and definitely do some of those things that we talked about. What do you do to help that person through? Even though you've been talking to them, you call them, you send them scriptures, and you know, give them positive thoughts and things like that. But they really seem to take it differently and have it sit there and at the graveside and things like that. So how do you want to reach out to that person? What do you
Okay. What's helping you go through the process?
Because I know Jesus.
Okay.
Maybe in the scriptures, and I know what he said is going to happen, and what I'm looking forward to in the end time.
Okay.
So therefore, I knew where mom was, and that makes me feel good, and so I'm at peace with that.
Okay.
But I don't know if maybe that person is not. I don't know what they're.
All right. So remember you said the way you're dealing with it is because you know Jesus. So when do I take the time to share with my loved one the Jesus I know? And it's not even about whether they accept him or not. It's about you sharing.
So I guess I just continue to.
Yeah, because in our minds, it's like, why aren't you getting it? But they're where they are. We don't judge them. All we can do is give them the same truth. Remember, we started at the beginning, and what did I say? I'm gonna give you kind of like an overview of the truth, but I'm not gonna give you everything because that's not my profession. I'm not the minister, right? But we have to be able to develop that relationship. People tell me all the time, you make it look so easy. Well, one reason I make it look so easy because I'm not supposed to make it look tough. Because I would give that client no motivation to move forward. And I apologize to them all the time. I'm sorry that I'm making this look easy. I realize it's not easy because you're where you are and I'm where I am. So until they start feeling comfortable and confident in themselves, they're not going to be there yet. But that doesn't mean that I stop sharing. I have to keep sharing. I have to still give them the support. It hurts me when I watch them go through and they don't have the same belief system as we do. But you don't stop sharing. You don't stop communicating with them, okay? Yes.
I know we're talking about the dead. But when this apply also to family members who no longer speak to each other? They kind of treat them like they're dead because of arguments.
Okay. That could be a whole day seminar. But one thing I'm going to share with you, though, is why did you stop talking to him?
I know two sisters who have not spoken to each other for over 20 years.
Yeah, but I'm only responsible for what I'm doing. Those two sisters, if they choose not to speak to each other, is on them. But me as a friend, I still communicate. We're still going to have disagreements. That's when that forgiveness piece comes in. Why do we stop talking? And then what usually happens? I wish I would have had the chance to say I loved you. I wish I would have had one more conversation with that person. But you can only do that because you guys really gotta have that forgiveness in your heart. You're not gonna forget what happened, but you got to still move on. Because that forgiveness, if you don't do it, will kill you. So you really gotta say, and it's not something that you do in and of yourself. You ask God for help. Because some of the stuff is very, very hurtful. And you don't think, you walk around and I'm not gonna ever forgive them. No, I'm gonna remember this for the rest of my life. And we do. Yes. But we have to do it. Forgiveness is not for them, it's for us. Yep. That's right. That's right. But you got to think about what's it doing to me? Yeah.
Counselor, what counselor will make somebody say all that crazy stuff? I told you last week, I said, one lady said, it's an old lady, and this is a young man, but I guess she still ain't ever talked to him about it. She said she would go to hell with a broken back before she forgive this young guy. This is an old school now. She older than me, or me older than me.
Well, you know what? I don't have an answer for you. You know why I don't have an answer for you? Because I don't read minds.
Yeah.
If she feels what she feels, sometimes you got to let them have that. It ain't about an argument whether you agree or disagree. She's hurt. Until she lets go of that pain somehow, she will always be hurt. So you can't necessarily fix it. But for me as an individual, we don't judge. I don't know what shoes she has walked in. We don't know what's really going on with her. I can ask that person if they want to talk about it. But hopefully, like we say, we're supposed to study every day. We have some spiritual things to say and not just picking things out of our whatever. So you have to ask for discernment. Lord, help me each day to say what you would like for me to say. Because we're human. Do we always say the right things? Absolutely not. And we always got to remember to thank him when we do say the right things if we help somebody. Okay? Thank you for that discernment. All right? So let's go through these real fast. And they may not be in the order as I may talk about them, but hopefully they are. Shock. Grief can be difficult and messy, a messy process. When a loss does occur, one of the first things you may experience is shock. Even when you anticipate that loss, like a death of a loved one with a terminal illness, it can be surprising and distressing. That's because no one ever can be truly prepared for a loss so significant. Consequently, when you are in shock after the loss, you may behave normally as if nothing has happened. Most of the time, this is because your body has not processed the loss yet. You may feel like the situation hasn't sunk in yet. You might also experience numbness or a sense of detachment from what has happened. These feelings and experiences are self-protective mechanisms that act as a buffer so that you are not overwhelmed all at once. Okay? Denial is the next one. Because the death of a loved one can have such significant impact on you, you might experience denial. During this stage of grief, it is simply too hard for your brain to comprehend that your family member, your friend, or other loved one has gone. Denial is your brain's way of spacing out your feelings of guilt, allowing you to acknowledge and experience only what you can handle in that moment. As you slowly begin to accept the loss and what it means for life now, your denial will begin to diminish. You may have a broader range of feelings and emotions when denial wears off. But until then, you'll have periods when you feel distress, which can be triggered by reminders of your loved one. You may also feel emotionally shut off from the people around you. Some cases, this is a normal feeling to want to avoid others so that you do not have to acknowledge or discuss the loss. So that's one of those things where, please don't call me. I don't want to talk about it. Sometimes you feel forgetful, easily distracted, or procrastinate during this stage of grief. You may also want to try to stay busy all the time and shut down emotionally. The main takeaway is that denial can affect your behavior in several ways, and you don't really know how the situation will play out until you're in it. But it's important to remember that however you feel after the loss is valid, it's okay. I may feel anger. While it's completely normal to feel angry after the death of a loved one or the loss of something important to you, you may feel confused or even embarrassed by these feelings. In these cases, it will be like tempting to squash, internalize, or even ignore your anger feelings, but they still exist and will likely manifest themselves in some way. You ever wonder why you go off and you don't know why you're going off? Okay. You also may be surprised to learn that you direct your anger at the person or thing that was lost. In certain situations, you could also feel angry with the healthcare providers, your friends, your families, members, God, or any other spiritual being you believe in. But under all that anger is your pain. While it may be uncomfortable to deal with, it provides more structure to your grieving than you remaining numb. We got to feel something. Remember that anger is a feeling just like any other and needs to be expressed. So the important thing is for you to find safety and healthy ways to express your anger, like pounding a pillow, going for a run, or even ripping up sheets of paper into tiny little pieces. Allow yourself to express your feelings, help you process your grief, and learn to cope with your new reality. I tell my clients, you can be angry at whatever you can be angry at, but you can't hurt anybody else and can't hurt yourself. Those are my things. All right? So bargaining. If you have feelings of guilt, shame, and blame, you experience many fit into the bargaining stage of grief. During this stage, people often feel helpless, hopeless, and ask themselves, what if questions? What I tell you about what ifs? You remember? Doesn't exist. No good comes from it. Okay? Because we forget to say the positive what if. It's always a negative what if. All right? You may feel guilty for not doing more to keep the loss from happening or for not spending more time with the person you lost. During the bargaining stage, it's common to wonder or say, I should have done this. If I'd only done that. While these types of doubts are normal, they are not where you want your thought process to remain. It is impossible to go back and behave differently or change the circumstances surrounding your loss. Who called that person home? Who called him? God did. So you tell him God he made a mistake? Okay, so you think about that sometimes. When we put things in reality and we start asking ourselves these questions about truth, oh, I probably shouldn't have gone there. And we do that all the time, don't we? Okay, so instead of thinking about any good memories you have with them, sometimes simply reflecting on these thoughts can help you let go of the guilt. It may also be helpful to do something specific, like writing a letter to your loved one or talking to them out loud. You would know they're not there, but we're just expressing those feelings out loud. Something about expressing feelings out loud really helps us get to the next stage. And writing does that too, and I'm going to end with that part. Depression. Yes, you got your hand raised?
You said you got a loved one. A lot of my two nephews and a lot of my mom and dad. Well, I got kind of strong at it. And I'm related to the cook and the mom. So I had taught them how to deal with it, when you go through loss, because, when you get close to people, and it's like when you lose out someone that's close to you, God stepped right in, and they can step in and help you deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, I did all that Christmas, Thanksgiving, I did okay. But we love sports, we love baseball. So when it comes down to that sport, I think about my mom and dad, I didn't call them all the time. And we discussed our grade, baseball stuff. So now since they're gone, it's so I continue to pray, ask God to make me stronger.
That's right.
So I'm glad that I got the people that work for the funeral home. I can talk to them and I go to their loved ones because they know how to talk to people that deal with them. So, I just thank God today.
Right. There are people that we can talk to. We don't stay in our own grief by ourselves. You guys got to reach out. All right. So one way to distinguish between the depression that is part of the grief process and cynical depression is to understand your symptoms and how often you experience them. When you are grieving, it might have a depressed mood for a few days and then feel better the next day. But with clinical depression, your depressed mood is ongoing, is persistent, and accompanied by feelings of hopelessness and worthlessness. So during grief, the sadness may also cause you to lose your appetite or be unable to sleep. If you find that you are not only experiencing these things, but also no longer feeling a sense of joy, have decreased energy, and have thoughts of death and suicide, it's important for you to talk to a mental health for professional and support. If you notice a loved one going through that and they have totally shut down, offer to them to seek help. Okay, do not leave them by themselves. It's real. Another one is the testing. The testing stage of this grieving process often involves trying different things that help you move forward. So in this stage, you are starting to build a new normal, kind of like when COVID came, but we had a lot of death doing that. We all made it somehow. We started doing things that kept us moving forward. We started protecting ourselves. So you start to build a new normal as well as processing your feelings and emotions created by the loss. For this reason, it is possible, I should say, to flow in and out of this phase or the other stages of grief process to overlap. So as you start moving forward, you will start experimenting with ways to better manage your feelings. For instance, you may think about joining a support group. You may start journaling or consider trying something new, all of which can help you learn to cope with your loss. In this stage, you start acknowledging that I now have a new reality and finding practical ways to cope. This looks different for everyone. So experimenting with new things can help you find the support you need. And then acceptance. Reaching the acceptance phase does not mean I'm okay with what happened. Instead, this part of the grieving process is more about accepting what your life looks like now. Okay? You will still need to listen to your feelings and adjust, but you will start to feel more whole, even if it looks different than it did before. Keep in mind that grieving the loss of someone you love is often a lifelong process. I know y'all been thinking about that. Nobody's really asked how long does it take. It's a lifelong process, okay? But with acceptance, you learn to adjust to life without them physically here with you. This will still be good and bad days, but you will start to feel more comfortable in your daily life. You will also be better equipped to tolerate uncomfortable emotions, even when they catch you by surprise. You ever go somewhere and all of a sudden you're reminded of them and you shed a tear? It can be uncomfortable because it's like, I don't want to cry right here. I'm at work. I'm tutoring some kids. What am I doing boo-hooing? Supposed to be having fun. But that's right. You go to the bathroom, you excuse yourself. That's right. So a quick review. When people grieve the death of someone they love, the loss of a relationship, or even the end of a job, they sometimes experience grief in different stages. However, it's important to note that not everyone experiences every stage, nor will they go through the stages in the same order. Instead of everyone experiences grief in their own way and at their own pace. That being said, knowing the stages of grief can be very useful in helping people understand what they are experiencing and why. If you are currently grieving a loss, it's important to be patient with yourself and allow yourself the space you need to come to terms with your new reality. If you suspect that you are struggling more than normal, reach out to a mental health provider for help in acknowledging your feelings and developing coping strategies, okay? Go to the last slide, we'll do this very briefly. It's about journaling. In your packet, you got journaling handout. Some people don't know what to write about. There's a bunch of questions on here. Expressing your loss. For many grievers, it is very important to have people around us to hear our testimony about the loss, to tell us our story at least one time. If you do not feel you have had an ample opportunity to share your story, please journal in your notebook about what happened at the time of your loved one's death and how you found out about it if you weren't present. Tell your story, okay? So there's some things on the journaling handout. If you're coping with haunting images or guilt and powerlessness, ask yourself this list of questions. The next one talks about coping with shock and difficulty. There's a bunch of questions on here I can write about. Secondary losses, some of us have that. Sometimes losses used to come in twos. So think about that, and I can write about my secondary losses. How's that making me feel? So sometimes we might go to that identity. Who am I? And what am I supposed to be doing from here on out? So there's some questions that are related to that. Signs and dreams. I told you about my little dream in the shower. Luckily, I had a belief system. And knew I didn't have the power to wake anybody up. Coping with our triggers, because we're going to have them. We can't avoid them. They're not going to just go away. Then lastly, I got to find meaning of life. What am I supposed to do now? And it's a change. But in this world, aren't things ever changing, ever evolving? What does the Bible tell us? What are we supposed to do? Keep our eyes focused on whom? Yeah, because he's driving this ship, right? Everything is in his hands. So we just need to ask, okay, Lord, I ask him all the time. I talk to him like he's my daddy. What are you doing? I do. And he shows it to me every time. This is what I'm doing, sis. Daughter. He will let me know every single time because you know I'm stubborn. I'm not afraid to say it. I already know where my difficulties are at. So, but I express myself. It may not make sense to anybody else, but I'm going to tell you how I feel. But I'm not going to disrespect you. But I'm going to tell you these are my thoughts. It doesn't matter. You don't have to like it, just like I don't have to like yours. But I'm going to respect you enough to let you have that. Okay? So we have to be a little bit more compassionate. And things will work out for our good. It always does. So there's some grief and bereavement ministry, the next sessions. But go back up a slide, if you would. All right, so holding on when life feels out of control. How do we do that? I can't even see that. Can anybody else see that? Read. Oh, it's behind me?
My spirit is racing away. My heart's heavy like lead. You going to read it?
I remember that. I don't think they can hear you on the thing because you don't have the mic. Oh, she's doing such a good job. I'll let her share.
Okay, holding on when life feels out of control. I sat there in despair, my spirit draining away, my heart's heavy like lead. I remember the old days, went over all you've done. I pondered the way you worked. Stretched out my hands to you, as thirsty for you as the deserts thirst for rain. Hurry when you answer, God, I'm nearly at the end of my rope. And that's in Psalms 143, 4 through 7. And it says, life does not give us a quick fix, but God is always moving, always working. Is that it? Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. All right. Just a thought for you. And then the last slide just gives us when the next workshops will take place. Hopefully you enjoyed that and it gave you some more information, but we do counseling. If you are in that clinical depression and you need some help and you need to speak to a professional, you may or may not see me, but you may see my staff. But I enjoyed that. You guys was asking me, how am I going to get through this when I just lost my daddy? Well, if you notice, it wasn't in my own strength. Just like I taught you before, hold on to God's unchanging hand, and he'll get you through everything that you need to get through. All right? All right, that's it.